Paul is managing director of SPOS, the training firm. He's been there from the beginning. I think, how long was it? 25 years, I think we quoted last year. So you're on to 26 years now, Paul.
Yeah, don't remind me, Simon. Yeah.
we were talking about how far back our history in project management methodology goes, and I have to say that it was a bit of a competition about who's been in the business the longest. But Paul has been very much specializing in training in originally PRINCE2, but of course that itself has been a growing world as many other methodologies have been built into the same family of methods. And of course, Paul is also very familiar with with other brands, shall we say, of methodology, which is why we invited him to give us an update. He was here last on January last year, and so we thought it was well timed that we had an update, because the world of methodology is constantly moving on. And I think anybody who is involved with project management really needs to know what the geography looks like, even if you're not using it. You know, you're going to sound a bit dumb if somebody mentions something and you think, oh, I don't know what he's talking about. So great briefing for everybody. And I think with that in mind, let's switch slide decks and get Paul started.
Can you get rid of the got it message? That's this thing. Still on screen.
We have to do it on our.
It's this end, I think. Yeah. This end.
Yeah.
It's all participants to agree to it. We need to click
on. If you go to the PC, there's probably an OK button you can press there. By the way, people in London, we can see you. So I can see exactly what you're doing. That was just right.
Okay, I'll share my screen, shall I?
Yes, please.
Okay then, hopefully is that displaying correctly?
Yes.
Super. Okay then. Right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining at the end of the day. You know, sort of we all have busy days and busy schedules, and I'm pleased to see that there's a good take up of this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a number of methodologies in terms of what they are, what they represent, what the objectives of various methods and approaches are in our project management industry. I'm also going to include some guidance on the accreditation side of things in terms of professional development, and then look at a couple of changes to some of the main methods that have come about over the last you know, sort of 6-12 months or so. And I'm quite happy to take some questions along the way. As Simon mentioned earlier, do put them in the chat box if necessary. I've got that right in front of me as well, but also quite happy to bring people onto the microphone as well. I'm more than happy to take questions on an ad hoc basis. Okay, so if there's anything that I'm talking about at the time and you'd like to have a brief discussion about that, or anything sounds vague to you, then by all means just come on in and we can discuss that. Quite often what you may be thinking is probably what everyone else is thinking as well. So you know, sort of a lot of questions will be very appropriate. Okay then, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at portfolio program and project management methods, looking at best practices. This does include a number of different accredited exam institutes and their methods. So we're going to look at PPM community, you know, portfolio program project management communities and frameworks, and how they link together, and also how they differ, of course, as well. Who's who? Well, I'm representing a training company, of course, and of which there are, you know, hundreds around the world. I generally focus on a number of exam institutes and accrediting bodies, such as, well, BCS is one of them, of course, but also APM, the Association of Project Management. They're the chartered body for project management in the UK. We're also going to look at a couple of approaches from APMG International. That's the accrediting body for AgilePM and change management. Used to be the accrediting body for PRINCE2 in the very early days, up until 2014. We're also going to look at PeopleCert. PeopleCert recently acquired Axelos, who owned or was the joint venture organization for methods such as PRINCE2, management of risk, and MSP program management. That's all come together as one organization now, with PeopleCert acquiring Axelos. I've also going to look at some international bodies of knowledge as well, just briefly introduce those around IPMA, which is the International Project Management Association, and the Project Management Institute, PMI. Okay, so that's a bit of an overview of the owners of the methods and bodies of knowledge that we're going to be trying to fit together in one large jigsaw puzzle, essentially. With my slides, I assume that everybody will get access to the slides at some point. We're just going to wrap them up into a PDF and give you access to these. There's not many slides at all. This next slide is the main feature, and I'm going to be on this particular slide probably for about an hour. Okay, and this is because I'm going to build up all of those different methods and guidances so that we can see how they link together and we can understand what the objectives of each of them are, so that it can give us a good overview of the PPM community and industry, really. I mean, there's so many approaches, there's so many qualifications, so many bodies of knowledge that quite often, we become a little blurred about what paths we should take, what methods we should be learning, and what ones we should be applying. And in reality, a little bit of everything does you good, actually, because they can work together very well. So looking at portfolio, program, and project management, let's just start building these up. Portfolio management is very much the glue, if you like, between an organization's corporate strategy and business goals and the change initiatives that we will be undertaking and implementing. Not every organization will have a layer of management called portfolio management, but pretty much all organizations will have that layer. Okay, they just might not call it portfolio management, but there needs to be a layer of management in an organization that can understand the business goals and business objectives, look at what resources and investments we have in order to undertake new change initiatives, and make decisions in prioritizing what we're going to undertake. So essentially, portfolio management, MOP, is a guidance that comes from PeopleCert, and it's a process-based approach. Essentially, it's got 2 life cycles within it, and I'll come to demonstrate what that means in a few moments. Sitting directly underneath portfolio management is program management, sometimes known as MSP if you're using the Axelos PeopleCert method. Of course, there are other program management methods that APM, PMI, and indeed IPMA have as a body of knowledge. And program management is very much defining a longer-term vision and coordinating a set of related projects to achieve a common goal. And this gives good relationships and good management for related projects that are achieving the same objective. So more on that in a few moments' time as well. The other layer we're going to be looking at is project management. I think this is, much more relevant to a lot of the audience who are in project management, looking at different approaches such as methods like PRINCE2, bodies of knowledge like IPMA and APM, but also agile approaches as well. Going to look at AgilePM and other areas like Scrum, for example, which are more technique-based, that can operate at the development levels. So there's quite a lot around the project management layers, but I'd like to just address those 2 upper more levels first in terms of portfolio and program management. So that's really sets the agenda, if you like, for this map being built up. there's a whole load of support approaches as well that's going to sit across the back of these layers, and I'll build these up as we go through the evening. So firstly, management of portfolios, MOP. Okay, portfolio management is a guidance that is owned by PeopleCert. They call it MOP, but there are also portfolio guidances in the bodies of knowledge of APM and IPMA. So you find this in a lot of areas. And essentially, to summarize quite easily portfolio management, we ask 3 questions. Okay, and those questions, quite simply, are firstly, are we doing the right things? So essentially, are we running the right projects and programs in order to support the business goals? Are we running them in the right way in terms of applying methodologies and common approaches that have been agreed with the organization to maximize the way we run these projects? And also, are we realizing the benefits from these projects when implementing changes? And that's really quite important, because we may be good at delivering projects, but that whole transition piece into the business is really critical, so we can achieve successful outcomes and ultimately realize our benefits. And what portfolio management is doing is looking at where the business or organization is aiming to head in terms of business goals and critical success factors for the business, and prioritizing our change initiatives. And this is where we ask those questions. Are we running the right projects and programs? Are we running them in the right way? And are we able, with this set of change initiative, to realize the benefits that we're intending to achieve and ultimately achieve our business goals? Portfolio management, as I say, you may have a structured approach to portfolio management using any of these guidances that are available, or it may well be the case that you sort of do it through strategic management without realizing that this is actually a good guidance called portfolio management. You typically have portfolio managers within portfolio management, and that will be supported by quite often a program management office who can ensure that there's good communication between all of those 3 layers of portfolio, program, and project management. Program management. Many project managers will be involved with program management. Program management does have its own organization structure, which will consist of sponsoring group, senior responsible owners, a program manager, business change managers, and so on. And quite often you get the same faces in program management structures as you do with project management structures. Essentially, what program management gives us is a framework, a structure that will enable us to identify the program that we're undertaking, and then be able to define that in the respect of establishing the projects required to achieve a longer term vision. Now, typically in program management, the way that works is it all starts off with having a vision clearly defined in terms of what our long-term objectives are. Now, I say long-term objectives, we do work with several organizations who run programs on quite a short time frame. One particular favorite of mine is a Formula One organization who run programs over 3-month periods, and the main reason for that is they focus on transition and benefits realization more than anything else. So by nature, programs are often longer than projects because they're made up of a number of projects within them, but that's not necessarily the case. Quite often it depends on what your focus needs to be and has to be for the organization. Now, essentially, what program management will do is it will clearly define a vision that needs to be achieved over a period of maybe 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, however long that vision may take to achieve. What we can then do is we can then start defining a blueprint, and the blueprint really dictates what the future state of the organization is. So within that blueprint, you would be looking to establish a number of different parts of your organization in terms of what they need to look like, in order to achieve the vision. And quite typically, if you're taking that sort of functional approach, you'd expect to see a number of projects that relate to that blueprint that we will undertake and manage over the period of time of the program. And what would happen, for instance, if you have a program that has, I don't know, say 10 projects within it that are all being coordinated to achieve that future state of the blueprint, then typically you may have a first tranche of program management delivery that might look to deliver 2 or 3 of those projects. And at the end of that first tranche, we would be using program management to ensure the transition of those project outputs into the organization. And this is the important part, because it's all very well having projects delivering outputs, but it's transitioning those into the organization and getting those outputs adopted and forming part of our business as usual areas, where we will then achieve outcomes and ultimately realize the benefits that we set out for. So what program management is doing is it's not only managing the coordination of the projects, but it's helping to transition the project outputs into the organization, and also having a close management with the benefits and the benefits realization. What would then happen is we'd then go into tranche 2, and the tranche 2 would then be looking to deliver the next set of projects and coordinate those projects in order to complete that next tranche. And at the end of there, we'd go into another set of transition to transition those project outputs into the business. And essentially, we're running that program in order to advance the business or advance the organization, should I say, in order to coordinate these projects to have step changes throughout the program. The focus on benefits management within program management is pretty strong in the respect that at the end of each tranche, in those transition periods, we are carrying out benefits management, benefits realization, so that the organization is accruing benefits as soon as possible when the projects deliver. There's a good coordination as well around program management within the projects, where you may have a shared business case or an aggregated business case at program level. This will ensure that any projects that do not deliver tangible benefits on their own, but they may enable other projects to deliver, it means that they're given equal priority. It also gives a good indication that we can align resources across different projects. Okay, and again, you know, project prioritization and resource prioritization is can be managed at program level, and also other practices such as issue management and risk management and so on, that can also be managed at program level, where we may have risks and issues that could affect other projects within the same program. It's important to understand, though, that program management isn't just big project management. That's not what it's about. Okay, there's a different focus on program management to project management in respect to that transition and the real focus on stakeholder engagement, stakeholder management, and benefits management. Essentially, in summary, program management enables you to align and coordinate projects within a program of business change so that you can effectively support specific business strategies. Okay, then. That then brings us on to the project management layer. Now, we should be all fairly familiar with project management, given the audience that we have, but essentially project management is the application of processes, methods, knowledge, skills, and experience in order to deliver project outputs. Okay, and if we successfully deliver the project outputs, then we achieve the project objectives. However, as I've already said, it's not always the case that if we successfully deliver the project outputs, that doesn't necessarily mean we're automatically going to achieve benefits, because there needs to be the transition to the business to ensure that those outputs are being used effectively. And this is where these 3 layers come in very well and work together nicely. On a regular basis, you would expect portfolio management to be keeping an eye on those change initiatives and ensuring that the organisation is running the appropriate programs and projects within its portfolios to ensure that the business goals are achievable. and that we're investing in the right places, of course. So they're the three layers, essentially, of a portfolio, program, and project management. And what I'm going to do is take that project management layer, and I'm just going to run through a number of different approaches and bodies of knowledge for project management. Now, before I do that, I feel like I've given a good introduction to what we're going to cover. Are there any questions so far? Right, okay, so hopefully it's all making sense at the moment. Okay, so portfolio, program, and project management. If you've seen the P3 statement in any of your literature, P3, P3M, P3RM, P3M3, all of these acronyms, P3 usually represents portfolio, program, and project management. Okay, so if ever anybody wondered what P3 was all about, that's usually what they're talking about, certainly in this industry anyway. Okay, then, so what we have is with project management, there's a number of different industry bodies that are used quite widely in the UK, certainly. Also, you've got a PMI, which is more US based, if you like. IPMA more based over in mainland Europe, but they are still used in the UK as well. Now, what we've got is in the project management arena, you've got APM. APM is the Chartered Institute for Project Management in the UK. It's been chartered now for a number of years. I forget exactly when they got chartered, but I think you're probably going back about 6 or 7 years. And it's only just recently, I feel personally anyway, over the last couple of years, that it started to get some traction in terms of the chartered project professional qualifications. And if you're serious about your industry and you're looking to enhance and develop your career, then APM is a good thing to look at in terms of the body of knowledge of APM, the competence framework. There's 29 competencies within APM. And they have a development scheme of anything from introductory level, which is PFQ, Project Fundamentals, all the way through to what we call CHPP, which is Chartered Project Professional. I feel that probably over the coming decade, I think you will probably find that in public sector projects, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a requirement there for project managers running large-scale projects to be chartered project professionals, in the same way that we have chartered surveyors and chartered accountants and so on like that. I think the industry is heading in that right direction. You see that project management is ubiquitous, isn't it? It's everywhere you look. People understand project management now. As Simon said in the introduction, I've been running Spoke now for 25 years, and in that time, I've seen a lot of changes and a lot of better understanding from other industry sectors in terms of what project management is and what the benefits of project management are. And I'm sure we all look back over the last decade or two and we see that real advancement of project management really is the key to all successful organizations. With APM, it's essentially a body of knowledge. That's what it's based on. There's different elements to APM from project practices such as risk management, issue management, organization structures, and the different types of structures you might employ, change control, quality management, and so on. So very much a lot of the hard side of the project management practices. But there's also a large element of people factor as well, looking at leadership and teamwork, what makes a good leader, looking at different theories as well, when we look at the softer sides of management and leadership, taking into account theories such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Herzberg's two-factor theory, McGregor's XY theories, and Hershey and Blanchard's situational leadership. They're the sort of things that we cover in APM. So it's a much more rounded approach using that body of knowledge. And we tend to get a lot of large corporates taking on APM as part of their project framework. From an individual's point of view, if people are looking for qualifications and career development, we often get people coming to us asking, should we do APM or should we do PRINCE2? It depends on the organization you're working for, of course. Sometimes that might be dictated, but it's a shame it has to be a choice, because a lot of organizations, sort of see the light, and they may well have some elements of PRINCE2 as their project management framework, and then overlay that with APM in terms of bodies of knowledge, looking at life cycles, for example, and how that might fit into their project framework. I think taking the best of a number of different approaches will always give you the best results. IPMA is the International Project Management Institute, or Association, sorry. So the International Project Management Association. And at project management level, you've actually got levels A, B, C, and D. That you can study for and acquire the qualifications for that. Yeah, IPMA.world has just come up into the chat. That's a great resource. I've got to say, with IPMA, I'm a big fan. I really do like the IPMA competence elements. There's 28 competence elements in IPMA at project level, 29 at program and portfolio level. The additional one, by the way, is coordinating a set of projects that you would do at portfolio and program level, but obviously not at project level. So 28 competence elements in IPMA. It's very similar to APM in the respect that you have a number of practices, which is the hard side of project management. A set of procedures like stakeholder procedures, risk and issue management, change control, everything that I've mentioned with APM. But also with IPMA, you also get other people factors, okay? And the people competencies cover all the motivational theories that I mentioned for APM, but also they include things like self-reflection, looking at how you behave and how you receive information and news and react to certain events, and reflecting on how that might affect your team and the people around you. There's also a piece there on self-management, which is becoming more important now, where we're having more virtual teams and virtual setups, and people need to be more self-managed and ensure that their environment is right, and that they've got that way of structuring their day, so to speak, and that's becoming quite important now. I suspect that what will happen is when we look at future editions of competence and bodies of knowledge such as APM and IPMA, I suspect that we'll be looking at integrating elements such as AI into the fray, and understanding how AI can be used to manage projects. And indeed, Simon, I'll be quite keen to register for that event that you were just advertising, because I think there's going to be big changes in project management guidances and frameworks, as we further develop those different capabilities. PMI, again, you've got the PMI PM professional. That's very much aligned to IPMA level, probably level D, maybe level C, and also the APM PMQ. What we have is that there are other qualifications around each of these. PMI is mainly a US used body of knowledge, again, with competencies. There are organizations in the UK that use PMI, of course, they tend to be the American corporate bodies. It's also quite well used across Asia. And APM, IPMA, and PMI are similar in their makeup, in the respect that it's made up of a series of competencies and bodies of knowledge. And to make it quite simple for everybody, I'd say that all three of those have more of the how to do things in projects. What I mean by that is that, because it's based on a body of knowledge, you've got more referencing out to example projects and such. So we're not talking about a concise manual that these bodies of knowledge are based on. It's a whole library of references and tools and techniques and examples that make up all the information you can gain from IPMA, PMI, and PMI. PMI and APM. There are higher levels of qualification as well. For example, with IPMA, you've got levels C, B, and A, and these range from associate project manager to certified project manager to project director, and also with APM as well, you've got that CHPP. Okay, so there's quite a lot there. Also with IPMA in particular, I think someone just put it in the chat actually. You do have the same guidance and body of knowledge and qualifications for project management, for program management, and for portfolio management. So you've got you've got all of that collateral, if you like, to go up, in a vertical way or across in a horizontal way in terms of sticking with the project management layer and becoming a senior project manager, an expert in that field, or you can go on the vertical and start studying from projects to program to portfolio. Indeed, the ICB4 in IPMA, which is the individual competency framework, gives you different sections. I think section 4 is for projects, section 5 is for programs, and section 6 is for portfolios. So it's all contained in the same guidance as well. Okay. What we then come to is PRINCE2, and PRINCE2 is a framework, a project management framework. It's very much process based. It's been around for quite a while, as have a lot of these guidances. PRINCE2 was originally released in 1996, and indeed we ran the first training course back in 1997. And it's evolved and developed over that period of time. It used to be owned by the UK government, owned by the Office of Government Commerce, later the Cabinet Office. It's no longer under ownership of the UK government. It was bought out by originally Axelos, but now PeopleCert. Just over the last couple of years, PeopleCert have acquired Axelos and have now rebranded, and they are now the 100% owners of PRINCE2. They've done well to develop it on a global basis. They continue to update it, and indeed, the latest update of PRINCE2 was released last September, PRINCE2 7. It remains the same methodology, and it is a methodology. It's a framework of processes and procedures that you have in it. It tells you what should happen, when it should happen, who should do it. It gives very little how things should be done. There are a few additional techniques in the latest version of PRINCE2 7, but essentially it's a framework there that you should look to adopt and tailor to your organization, and then I would recommend that you look to guidances such as APM or IPMA to overlay competencies in a framework such as PRINCE2. Just one of these frameworks is often not enough to have a full singing and dancing framework and project management system in any organization. Couple that with all the experience that you've got in your organization, then that's gonna really bode well for a good solid structure for your project management teams to operate within. At team level, and also project team level, if you like, we do have development and agile development. There's a number of different agile approaches that are available, of course, and there's a lot more than what's on this screen as well. With the whole agile and scrum world, essentially the ones that we get involved with that are are more closer to what we do and what I'm familiar with is AgilePM, which is owned by APMG. Axelos is PRINCE2 Agile, and also PMI that have a number of different agile approaches, more than what's on the screen there. The two main ones that I'm more familiar with is APMG's AgilePM. This has a framework. It's based on Scrum, really, or actually it's based on DSDM. If anybody's familiar with DSDM, it stands for Dynamic Systems Development Method. It was launched in the 90s, and it was very much designed for systems development. And what's happened is APM Group, APMG, took the DSDM method and in partnership with the Agile Business Consortium, developed AgilePM. And essentially what that is, it stands for Agile Project Management. So it's taken the DSDM method, which has familiarity with Scrum techniques, such as sprints and Kanban boards and information radiators and so on. And they've wrapped a layer of project management around it. So it gives it a bit more structure from a project point of view. And this enables organizations to look at an agile approach or an iterative approach to their projects while maintaining the project management disciplines. And essentially, the way AgilePM works is you still have a framework, you still have a process model or a life cycle where you have a form of concept, a feasibility a period of the project at the beginning. Then you have an initiation phase, which is called foundations. Okay, this is where we would be scoping the project to what we know about so far. Agile approaches, and in particular AgilePM, is very much a framework where we'll be looking at using prioritization around requirements to establish and understand what we know at the moment. We can then have an evolutionary development to deliver that part of the project. And then we can plan again later when we've learned from what we've just delivered. So in terms of defining requirements and defining the scope of an AgilePM project, we would be very much looking at fixing the scope of the current knowledge as opposed to trying to plan the entire scope of the full delivery that we may do in a more linear waterfall approach. And that works really well, sort of within AgilePM, it's got the usual agile techniques such as the Moscow technique. It has time boxing, which relates to sprints in Scrum. We have the solution development team, which is providing those solutions. And it makes use of product owners and business analysts who can, really act as the translator between the business requirements and the development teams, translating business talk to technical talk and vice versa. And one of the real advantages of agile approaches, of course, is that we don't try to initiate and plan and develop the whole model that we may not know enough about. But also what we can do is through an iterative approach, we can produce products and deploy those products much earlier rather than waiting for the full development to be complete. And that gives us the opportunity to achieve and accrue benefits much earlier than we would do in a waterfall stroke linear fashion. PRINCE2 Agile is again, there's another framework that comes from Axelos, and essentially, in contrast to AgilePM that you can use in isolation, AgilePM is a complete framework in its own right. PRINCE2 Agile, on the other hand, is very much aimed at PRINCE2 practitioners who are working with Agile teams. So it's essentially providing a bridge, if you like, between the PRINCE2 structured project manager and understanding how Agile teams work. And coordinating them together, really, so that when we're looking at user requirements and gathering user requirements, we're involving the Agile teams in a collaborative way, perhaps using user stories to establish requirements. When we're planning, we're doing that in a collaborative way with the teams as well, and so on. And we may be looking at sort of understanding more the use of fixed time and cost elements within time boxes or sprints when working with those development teams. So it's very much very much an insight and an information piece for the current PRINCE2 practitioner. Half of the PRINCE2 Agile guidance is indeed PRINCE2 and the PRINCE2 processes. Okay, so if you're looking to learn about or implement an agile approach, PRINCE2 Agile is probably not the one to go for unless you have a PRINCE2 environment that you're working in already, because otherwise it won't really sit comfortably, if you like. If you're looking for an agile framework, I'd probably recommend AgilePM as a complete framework to go down that road. What we then have is we then have a whole series of other guidances that sit across the back of these layers. Before I go on to there, you know, is there anybody got any questions or comments that they'd like to bring in at this point? I can see a hand waving.
Yeah, they're just unmuting, I think.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Hi, Paul, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you well, yeah.
So you describe PRINCE2 Agile as a bridge where you want the Agile part of your project or work stream in your project to be controlled in an Agile way. You'd use that as a bridge. So that sits under the PRINCE2 project management framework.
Yeah.
Do you therefore say that the Agile PM you said is a framework in its own right? So is that best suited to projects which are entirely about product delivery?
Yes, it would be. Yeah, absolutely. I think in the early days when PRINCE2 Agile was released, you know, before I really looked into it, I thought, oh, this is going to be great because PRINCE2 Agile, they're going to go down the Scrum route and own a you know, a concise altogether Agile approach. That's a little bit naive of me because Agile is very much a term that we might use in the same way that we might use the term management. Okay, so it's a big umbrella term, Agile. Now, what I learned after that, you know, a number of years ago, was that when I'm talking to even my PRINCE2 clients, if they're looking at going Agile, the first thing I ask them is why do you want to go Agile? Quite often we get the response that, well, everybody else is, and it's like, right, okay, you know, you need to be aware that, you know, there's a whole lot of projects out there that are not suited to an agile approach. Sometimes we do need to deliver the whole project in order for it to be of any use, of course. Now, I used to you know, push people to the PRINCE2 Agile approach, but you know, it struck me very quickly that when I looked into AgilePM, and indeed I then became qualified in AgilePM as a practitioner and trainer, it's an interesting approach, and it really does lend itself well to product development. And what it gives you a bit more structure, if you like, than Scrum gives you. When you look at AgilePM, you know, you could be quite easily mistaken that the main evolutionary development part of AgilePM is essentially Scrum. But what you've got is prior to that, you've got feasibility and foundations, you know, where we essentially plan the project. The organization structure has a project manager, and that project manager sits on the business side. But then you've got the solutions design team, which sits in the development part of the evolutionary development cycles. And that's where the work's being done, the prioritization's being done. We put in products that aren't completed on a backlog for reprioritization for the next round of evolutionary development. And essentially, you've got the product owner sitting in that solutions design team, ensuring that we're delivering to the business need, of course. You know, and the project managers, they're keeping an eye on the business side to ensure that it still meets the appropriate business case. So it's a complete framework in its own right. Whereas PRINCE2 Agile, it draws on PRINCE2. So you need to understand PRINCE2 and you need to have a PRINCE2 framework, but it sort of maps across different elements of Agile approaches. Okay. Essentially what you'd need if you're implementing PRINCE2 Agile, you'd really need like a PRINCE2 framework, which is what it's designed for, but you'd need Agile approaches because you haven't actually got the whole evolutionary development cycles very clearly laid out in that as a method in its own right. If you had an organization that had Scrum development teams, then PRINCE2 Agile would be more applicable to your PRINCE2 project managers so that they understand how that whole Agile environment works. Yeah. So yeah, you know, and this is why when you look at Agile projects, if you want a good framework, standalone framework that doesn't rely on anything else, then I'd say AgilePM is a good one in terms of having that project element to it as well. Okay, it's well worth looking into it, you know, sort of from that context. That's not to say as well that PRINCE2 and AgilePM can't sit alongside each other in the same organization. Of course they can, you know, but essentially you wouldn't be looking to hybrid the two, because AgilePM can do the project management parts itself as well. What AgilePM can't or wouldn't seek to do, though, is manage the waterfall linear projects. Okay, because you know the whole of AgilePM development is based on evolutionary development and iterative approaches.
Well, I see Enrico's got an interesting question for you there in the chat. I don't know, Enrico, do you want to turn your mic on and pass that question on, or should we just take it from the chat?
Right, there is a plan from APM. I'll read it anyway. Yeah, that's probably just easier. There is a plan from APM and PMI to collaborate regarding the exams later this year. What are your thoughts on this? Right, okay. I guess this is on one of my later slides, Enrico, actually. So well done for for preempting that. I'm not too familiar that the APM was collaborating as such with PMI, but I know that they're looking at adjusting the exams for APM, and the APM exams at the moment. This really only applies to the PMQ, the project management qualification under APM. And currently, the exam is 3 hours plus 15 minutes preparation time, and you have to answer 10 questions from a possible 16. And this exam is based currently on a written exam. It's closed book, and you have to answer questions to, for example, explain 2 reasons why you might benefit from a robust business case. And you start with a blank piece of paper, and you have to demonstrate your understanding. What they're changing those exams to, and this will be as from, I believe, July this year, they're changing it to a 2-part exam, very similar to PMI and similar to IPMA as well. What they're doing is you're going to have a element of multiple choice, okay? So multiple choice questions, which I believe will be, I think it's probably going to be something like a half-hour exam. It might be an hour. I'm not sure. I can't remember what the exact timings are. And then what you'll do is you'll have a 30-minute break, I believe, and then there will be I think a 2-hour short answer test exam, which will essentially follow a similar format to what the PMQ exam is now. So you'll be asked to describe 3 steps of a stakeholder management process, and again you're writing again. And what they're trying to get away from is 3 hours of written exam. I think what this will give us is two ways of testing people in terms of recalling information through a short answer test, and then testing people's real true understanding and depth of understanding through that questioning in terms of explaining or describing their knowledge and understanding of different practices. Okay, and to be honest, I think it's not a bad idea. I'm not a fan of long exams. I don't think it's a good way of assessing people. I think given the multiple choice exam followed by the written exam with a short break in between, I think it gives people a bit more chance to refocus, maybe visit the restrooms, get a drink, and then come back and refocus again. I think sometimes these exams, when you look at the APM exam, particularly at the moment, it's 3 hours plus 15 minutes preparation time. There's no break between the preparation time and the actual exam time. So essentially, it's a 3-hour, 15-minute exam, and it's like, crikey, that's a long time. What are we really testing here? So I think there's some good improvements that are being made by APM. And to be honest, I think there's been some great improvements and advancements from APM generally over the last couple of years. So it's good to see, because they are a real key player in our industry, of course. Good. Hopefully that answers your question. What they are planning as well, just in case you are looking at APM, if you want to take the current exam, which is well tried and tested, of course, I think the deadline for taking that exam was advised to be July. Okay, you can take the exam, the old exam or the current exam, up until September, when the new exam will be released. But the reason they're advising not to take the existing exam after July is because if anybody does unfortunately fail that exam, you won't have enough time to have received your result in order to retake the same exam. Okay, so for example, if you took your exam in July, it usually takes about 8 weeks, 10 weeks to get your results, in which case they would have decommissioned the current exam already. So you'd be on the new one after that, which I don't think would be a bad thing, to be honest, but that's just the advice from APM. Yeah, if you want to take the existing one, get in quite quickly. Okay. Also, by the way, one other thing that APM are doing, and actually, no, I'll hold on to that next comment until I get to the slide after this, because otherwise I won't have anything to say on the subsequent slide about APM, because they are changing the way they present it all as well. So more on that in a moment. Okay, I'll do just a little teaser there. Right. Okay then. I'll carry on through this. So we've got portfolio program and project management. Okay, then you've got a whole load of other approaches and methods that sit aside supporting all of this. You've got P3O. P3O, it's not a Star Wars robot. P3O is portfolio program and project offices. Okay, and this is a guidance for support offices, and it suggests different types of project offices that could be employed. Anything from a central office, which would be a central program office for an organization supporting many different projects and programs across the organization. You could have, as well as the central office, you might have an embedded program office, which is designed and embedded into a key large-scale project. Okay, that's quite expensive to set up, and a lot of organizations would prefer just to keep a centralized office. But also you've got a hybrid between the two, where you've got they call it a hub and spoke. And essentially what you'd do is you'd use the centralized program office in terms of their processes, procedures, expertise, knowledge, templates, and so on. And then you may second a person or two to a project, in which case that would give the project a dedicated resource from the central office, so they go there permanently, or at least for the length of the project. So different types of program offices. There's lots of tools and techniques in P3O, and what you find is MOP and P3O, so portfolio management and P3O, work very closely together in terms of driving a center of excellence into any organization. And if you're looking to set up these type of frameworks, it's P3O that you should be looking to in terms of structuring the different types of portfolio program and projects that you're running. Where the boundaries are. When does a project become a project? When does it become a major project? What sort of controls and processes should we be engaging with those different types of projects? Okay, and that can all come from that centralized program management office. It's a great place for new project managers to learn their trade as well, before getting involved in managing projects in their own right. It works really well. Okay. Now then, that's one point. Another method, by the way, P3O is another PeopleCert Axelos methodology, as is MOV. MOV is not really supported that well anymore, unfortunately. Management of value is essentially a guidance that's aimed at the senior management to ensure that we can understand what the true value of our business cases are. Now, it may well be that you've got some benefits that have been identified in some of your change initiatives, where we're saying, look, we can maybe process some of this work in half the time. You think, that sounds good to me. Well, that's the benefit. Okay, so you're saving time on efficiency, or maybe you can produce twice as many goods in the same time. Fantastic. It sounds even better. Well, management of value looks to see what the actual value of that is. If we were able to be producing twice as many goods in the same amount of time, is there real value to that? What are we going to do with all these extra units that we're producing? Is the market ready for them? Is there a need for that in our market? Okay, if we're saving time and saving efficiencies, do we have plans for redeploying personnel, for example, to get efficiency from other areas? Or are we just going to have redeployment or efficiency and no real value from that? Okay, it's all very well saying we're going to do things and save 10% of personnel, But what can you do with that 10% of personnel that you've got? Have you got other initiatives that can be taken on? And what is the actual value of that and doing that? So it just takes that business case a little step further, if you like, and helps prioritize those projects. And as you can imagine, MOV, management of value, and management of portfolios would be working very closely together. And in fact, you know, sort of quite often we go in and run these type of guidances together. So you'd have an MOP and MOV a couple of days. You don't want any more than that. I mean, the whole thing's designed as a 5-day training course, I think, and you think it's not going to happen. You know, you'd be lucky to get your senior managers engaged in this over the space of a day. Okay, and if I'm really honest, you can cover most of the important points on that. The problem with things like MOP and MOV, because it's aimed at senior management aren't interested in going and getting a foundation and practitioner certificate. You know, they're interested in getting the real good takeaways from it, and that's where you'd be better employed looking at seeing if you can get a get a half-day briefing or 1-day briefing, you know, to really get under the skin of how your organization works, you know, from a senior management point. That would work really well. Management of risk. This is on its latest version, which is version 4. Okay, management risk is all about corporate governance. You know, we obviously have risk management in portfolio programs and projects. And management risk covers all of those different levels. So we've got risk management processes and procedures and frameworks in portfolios and in programs and in projects. We've got all of these procedures in place. You know, we identify risks, we understand them, we put into countermeasures where we need to. We really need to look at opportunities as well, by the way. You know, positive risk is a real feature here. I certainly see that a lot of organizations don't really do positive risk very well. And I think I've worked out why. It's essentially, you know, if you identify any opportunities during your project, what do you do with it? Well, sometimes we sort of turn a blind eye because it just means more work. More so, we may well try to take that opportunity, but because we're scheduling to the work in hand, we very rarely have additional resources to allocate to particular opportunities. So essentially what happens is these opportunities that come along, they get parked. You know, we record it on the risk register. It gets parked for a period of time, and by the time we come around to identifying whether we do have the resources to take on additional work or exploit other opportunities, the moment's gone, you know, and that opportunity may well be diminished. You know, so what's the answer? You know, we can't just throw additional resources at projects just in case we get presented opportunities. But I think maybe a dedicated team or dedicated resource in an organization to keep an eye open for various opportunities so that it can be managed at the time. I think that works really well. I think also project managers need to understand that they've got that opportunity, if you pardon the pun, they've got the opportunity to make a difference. Project managers are on the forefront. You know, they're there to actually make the difference. You know, and if you can feed back your information in terms of what you see working and what those opportunities are, you can feed those back to the strategic body, and that may well come back down to you as another project that could be taken on. And I think sometimes project managers are very focused on the job in hand, and rightly so. You know, but you've got an obligation as well to do something to feed back and actually steer the direction of an organization potentially by feeding back some of this opportunity management that we might be missing. Also part of management of risk here, what you have is corporate governance in the respect of corporate risk management, and also operational risks as well are covered in that MOR, management of risk guidance. Okay, quite a lot of techniques around there as well, which helps implement these different frameworks. Next up, change management. Change management, the one that I'm talking about here is from the APMG. Okay, APMG is based on the Change Management Institute, and this is something that project managers need to be aware of. I've seen a lot of roles being advertised recently for project change manager. You think, oh, that's an interesting role. Project change manager. What does that mean? What some organisations are trying to get project managers to do is to own the change management as well. Quite interesting, because as a project manager, your objective is to deliver on time, to budget, to quality. Okay, that is basically what you get paid to do, and you need to get that completed, in place, and just push through everything else. Change management, on the other hand, the focus is on the hearts and minds. Okay, the effect that that change has on the individuals, and what the change managers need to do is need to look at the user environments, look at the teams, look at the individuals, look at the organization, look at that capacity for change, and engage with people very early, you know, so that you know, the user environment and the customer environments feel a sense of ownership, you know, so that you can win hearts and minds, as opposed to try to push changes onto them. And there's been a number of studies that, you know, sort of you could get up to 80% more effective success through projects by having effective change management and involving people much earlier. If we start to involve people at a project transition towards the end of a project, you're not going to get much change out of the users. Now, change management, yeah, really great, you know, in terms of that focus. But where you get a project manager being asked to do the change management as well, I wouldn't say it's a conflict of interest, but it becomes quite difficult when your whole objective is to push this change through by delivering the project on time and to budget, while trying to look after the users, you know, sort of wants and needs, in terms of whether, you know, people are going to start resisting this change. And I think we can do it to some extent by involving customers and users through definition and initiation stages, you know, and having presentations and town hall meetings and seminars like this, you know, to keep everyone informed. All part of the stakeholder engagement, isn't it, really? But change management's a little bit more than that, you know, in terms of you know, really understanding how people feel about a change coming. And you know, most people tend to you know, sort of have a dim view of change in terms of it's just going to mean more work, or it's going to change the way they work, or they're not going to be able to do their job anymore quite as effectively as they were, you know. So you know, there is an element of fear around change, and you need to work with people on that, and that's the role of change management. And certainly, you know, keeping it separate from the project management, which is much more objective in terms of delivery, I think is probably the better way to do it. And the last one that goes down the back of these is BCS, business analyst. You know, which again, you know, you've got plenty of information on that here for business analysts. And essentially, what we're looking at in business analysts is employing people who can really understand what the business needs are and translate those requirements into the project. You know, all too often, you know, so we don't always get consistency between user requirements, the business needs, and what the technical delivery is. And by having business analysis in place, so that you've got those BAs really understanding what the business need is, understanding what the user need is, but being able to understand the technical jargon and the technical talk, and act as a person with two hats, essentially, going from business to technical to business to technical, and acting as that interpreter. That works really well. And what I'm starting to see is project managers are starting to develop their skills on a broad basis, where, you know, you might have project managers undertaking qualifications and developments such as APM, APMA, or PRINCE2. But then, you know, they may be looking at program management, you know, but a foundation level, just to get an appreciation of how you're affecting other areas. You may well get project managers that are understanding agile approaches, so that they can understand how agile team works. But also, you know, there seems to be a big sway of project managers taking on the responsibility of client managers, okay, and account managers. So there's much more interaction and interfacing between the project managers and the customer. You know, certainly what I've seen over the last few years, there seems to be a much more emphasis on that. And this is where the business analyst credentials, if you like, come in really well, because it means that you end up being a resource there who can talk every language, really. You know, no matter who you're talking to, you've got that understanding of the whole 360-degree picture. Okay, and I think that really works. That's what separates out project managers from, you know, sort of really excellent project managers, to have that good understanding and awareness of everything. And you don't have to spend a lot of money on this either. You know, there's so many resources available to us now. I'm running a APM PMQ course this week. Yeah, which is why I'm still in my flow at the moment, because I've been training, I think, 3 weeks solid now. You know, and I'm really upbeat from it. And you know, what I'm seeing is, and hearing is, a lot of my delegates across those courses that I've run just in the last few weeks, they're jumping onto YouTube, you know, looking at 3 and 4 minute videos on things like negotiation and on Maslow's hierarchy of needs and so on, just to get different viewpoints and different ideas. So, you know, I mean, we've never been in a situation where we've got so much free resource to learn. And if you want to enhance what you're doing, but you don't want to spend too much time, and you don't want to spend too much money, have a look around. You know, there's so much resource out there, you know, and you know, certainly there's plenty of people in this room giving a presentation that can point you in the right direction as well.
Just a question.
Yep.
In terms of change management, I noticed that branch isn't really flowing down in the diagram and to agile and development. Does that mean that that element of change management stops you know, those years, or does it, you know, does it flow down into agile development as well?
Yeah, it's very well spotted. Yeah, well done on the old eagle eye there. And I did do that on purpose, actually, you know, because quite typically change management would be undertaken by the customer, you know, the host environment for the project. And therefore, you know, typically the agile development teams and so on would usually be from the supplier environment, and therefore not really be affected by the change, because it's, you know, they're providing the development teams and the products, and they're putting that into the user environment. And the rest of that environment that we're looking at is really coming from what we'd call the host organization, the customer environment, and therefore I'd expect to see change management really focusing on that customer environment. Okay, because the development teams and such are arguably not going to be affected by the change. They're more effecting the change, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's also why I've left MOV on the left-hand side there, just short of everything else. I may well bring MOV down to program management as well, actually. But when I put this diagram together, I thought it probably ends there, because that's where the prioritization of projects and programs needs to be, and then the value of that portfolio needs to be assessed at portfolio level. Okay, so there is a bit of thinking behind, you know, sort of what overlays what. But well spotted. That's a good question. Finally, on this slide, you know, so that's pretty much you know, sort of the framework. What we do have is P3 M3, portfolio program and project management maturity model. So 3 P's, 3 M's, and essentially what we've got there is we've got the 3 levels: portfolio, program, and project management. And this is very much a framework for assessing organizations' maturity in these disciplines. And essentially what you've got is a number of different areas that will be assessed. So you've got the control, benefits, finance, risk, governance, stakeholder, and resources. And essentially the way we'd carry out a review of an organization's project management practices and maturity is that it usually consists of questionnaires and such, interviews at different levels in the organization, you know, at you know, senior management and such. Typically, any organization having a maturity assessment, you'd usually choose whether you're having that assessment at project level, program level, or portfolio level. And you know, we recommend only one at a time, really. You know, you really need to start at the project management level, and essentially you get scored out of 5 on the maturity model framework. And that will be a culmination of all those different elements that I've just talked about, you know, sort of in terms of control, benefits, finance, risk, governance, stakeholder, and resource. And it'll be the P3 M3 consultant that will assess what level of maturity you would end up with. Now, the thing is, the scoring on this, it sometimes seems a little unfair, because it always goes to the lowest, the denominator. So if you're scoring a 1 in any of those particular areas that have been assessed, whereas you're scoring 3 or 4 in others, you might end up that, you're, one of the criteria in, I don't know, like control, for example, project control. If you score a 1 or less in control in one of those assessment criteria, then you'll get a score of 1 on that control point. And it's the same with benefits, finance, risk. And you can break each of these down, and it shows the assessment criteria for each area. And then what you do is you aggregate each of the 7 areas that have been assessed and give a final overall maturity score. And it's quite interesting. We've been through this with quite a lot of clients, and at the beginning, people are saying, yeah, I think we're probably a 3 or a 4 out of 5, to be honest. And I'll tell you what, really well established structures within organizations are struggling to score above 1.5. It's quite incredible. And because it's such a detailed assessment, you only need to drop in one particular area, one particular assessment criteria, and it just drags everything else down. So, I like this because it really identifies where you can improve as an organization. But I'm not a great fan in the scoring mechanism. And what you can do with P3M3, you can use the assessment tools and everything without getting the scoring as well. And if I'm really honest with you, I just think, yeah, that's going to be a better way, because I don't like the way it scores it. It just paints a really poor picture, and sometimes we can do without that. And the benefit of not having a scoring is that you don't have to pay for that license then, because it don't come from the owners. But there's quite a lot of maturity models out there. There's not too many individual ones though. This is based around organizational maturity. What I'd like to see though is sort of individual assessments like this. And the closest we get to it, I guess, is frameworks like APM and IPMA, where you've got assessment levels of qualification. So, for example, in IPMA, levels C, B, and A, you have to write an executive summary report of 15 pages demonstrating your experience. You've then got a 25-page full report that expands on 1 or 2 of your projects that you've written in your application form. You then have to do an exam. You then have to have a simulation. You then have to have an interview. And it's like, why? Oh, wow, that's like a lot. Yes, it is a lot, but it's a qualification that's well worth it. And APM is going down the same road with their PPQ and CHPP qualifications. And that really gives a personal assessment, if you like, in terms of your experience and knowledge and how you're developing as a project professional. So there you go. So that's the model. That's what I wanted to really build up for everybody. Okay, and we've got some summary information on each of these different titles towards the back end of the slides. And as I say, I think I'm right, Simon, in saying that the copy of the slides will be available to anybody. They'll be downloaded or accessed some way or another. I'm sure Simon can summarize that on the closing points. Right. Key updates. Not got too much to say about the key updates. There's been 2, or there has been and will be 2 major updates that affect what we've just been talking through. Okay, the first one being PRINCE2. PRINCE2 7 was launched in September 2024. Okay, so it's been around for 6 months now. Okay, and it changed. Not massively, but there are some key changes in it, in the respect that you've now got sustainability, which has been introduced as one of the key project variables. So where you look at variables in project management generally, which are time, cost, quality, scope, benefits, and risk, they're the ones we need to try and control. You've also got sustainability there to ensure that what we do is in line with the sustainability policies of the organisation and the industry. And also that it's sustainable from an environmental point of view, but also able to be supported by the organisation. There's no good projects delivering products and outputs to an organisation that can't afford to run them. Also, you've got a section on people as well. Okay, so people within projects, it's sort of starting to cross over with the bodies of knowledge. Okay, there's not too much soft skill stuff in the people section, you know, but it is making sure that we get the right people involved in the project management team. The people remain motivated, so there's an element of leadership and teamwork there. How to build teams, you know, sort of, and from there, you know, we might start going into models like the Tuckman model of forming, storming, norming, and performing. It doesn't really go into those techniques though, because PRINCE2 has never been a technique-based approach. It's been a process-based approach. But nevertheless, you've got those new introductions, but also on PRINCE2, you know, most of the other stuff stays the same. You've still got processes. You've still got the 7 processes. For those of the people who know PRINCE2, you've still got themes as well, the 7 themes, although they have renamed them and they're now practices. Okay, and again, that brings it in line with other approaches such as APMG. The exam criteria remains the same as before. You know, you've now got a 3-year life on the practitioner certificate. And I believe I saw the other day that they brought in a 3-year life on a foundation certificate, although they still claim that the foundation certificate will live on forever. It just has a date of expiry on it. And you think, right, okay, well, how does that work? But hey, I guess it means you don't have to take it again to prove that you're qualified. APM PFQ is still the same as is PPQ and CHPP. The main qualification that applies to project managers at the moment is APM PMQ, which is the project management qualification. We've just been speaking about the new exam format, weren't we? That's due out from September. Okay, and that's going to be part multiple choice and part short answer test. So they are splitting it into 2 parts of the exam that you would take in the same sitting. Okay, it's not like PRINCE2 exams where you'd have a foundation and practitioner where they're 2 different courses. This is one exam, but it's just split into 2 parts. Okay, so that's going to come from September onwards. I'm quite excited about that because I think, you know, I think people will do better at that 2-part exam. I really do. Just based on the comments I made earlier about length of exams and the stresses that can cause. But also the other thing I was going to go down and say was they're changing what the PMQ syllabus is based on. Now, at the moment, it's based on the body of knowledge, and they're changing that to be based on the competence framework. Now, if you wanted to get a copy of the APM competence framework, you can just Google it. Yeah, you can download the competence framework from the APM website, and you'll see that there's 28 elements in the APM competence framework, and they cover project context in the respect of the environment of the project, and the organization of the project, and so on. They cover practices such as quality management, stakeholder engagement, planning, scheduling, resourcing, risk and issue management, and so on. So all of those project practices, and also they cover the people factor, you know, things like you know, teamwork and leadership and motivation and so on. You know, so it's becoming a little bit more similar to the IPMA framework, if you're familiar with that. Okay, so that's all exciting stuff. And that new exam is going to be based on the competence framework as opposed to the body of knowledge. A lot of it's going to be similar though. You know, there's not going to be massive changes. So if you've been studying APM, most of your studies and most of your knowledge is going to be there anyway. There's just a few extra elements of competence in that framework that you'd need to take on and learn additionally. So that's going to be the main change there as well. You know, they're working on it from July, and should be all ready for us from then on. But mainly in September, I think, is their big launch. Okay, so exciting stuff, really. And I have heard, I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say, but I did hear a rumor, and it is just a rumor, that they may be working on the 8th edition of the body of knowledge. But that's probably not going to be seeing the light of day until probably the back end of 2025, I'd imagine. And I'm quite excited for that, because I think that's where we will see a lot of other advances in the respect of AI in projects and that sort of technology. Also, a lot more on virtual teams as well, because we've become really quite well versed, haven't we, over the last 5 years of virtual teams now. And I think that section needs to be updated, to be honest. Okay. Got a question here from Enrico again. Project organizations are looking towards integrating AI governance and ethics in their PM bodies of knowledge. Your thoughts? Yeah, as I was just saying, you're probably typing that as I mentioned it. I think that we can't avoid it, can we? I am convinced that the future bodies of knowledge are going to really embrace AI. I think in terms of the next developments, you'll see quite a bit of AI coming in terms of project reporting, for example, and governance. I think there's a lot to be had there in terms of the advantages, but also even things that we feel that have already been integrated, things like Agile, for example. You look at some of the frameworks I've been talking about today, like PRINCE2 and APM. Yes, they include Agile. They talk about linear and iterative life cycles and all this sort of stuff. It just doesn't feel it's really been integrated, though. It feels like it's sort of been added on. And what I'd like to see is in future bodies of knowledge that this sort of stuff is really truly integrated into those approaches. And I suspect that what will probably happen if we get an update to any bodies of knowledge in the next year or two, I'd imagine it'd go down the same road. We'll probably get AI that's sort of been bolted on as an afterthought, but then it'll start to get properly integrated over the coming years as it becomes more understandable and commonplace. Again, my own personal opinions really, as opposed to anything that I've read or seen. Final slide, really. Sort of keeping a close eye on time. Training certification. I've mentioned this as I've gone through, so I'm not going to dwell on this, to be honest. But all certifications, you can learn all of this at your own pace using your own resources, or you can use accredited training organisations such as Spoke. All the exams are available online. The APM have not gone back to paper-based exams. All the other exam institutes have, so you can take paper-based exams at exam centres if you wish. Most people are still taking online exams, but APM will only offer paper-based exams by special arrangement and under special circumstances by appeal. So that's something to bear in mind. Most of these courses are held over 4 days training or 5 days training, or 30 to 40 hours of self-study. That's usually quite typical. Okay, the PeopleCert exams usually have 2 exams, Foundation Practitioner, and the bodies of knowledge such as APM and IPMA, they could have 1 or 2 exams. If you're looking at level D IPMA, then you've got a multi-choice and a short answer test, which is going to be followed by APM, of course, in terms of that format. So, usually over the space of 2 to 3 hours, those exams, okay, in total. And just a summary of Spoke and where I'm from, we were the first ever accredited provider for PRINCE2 training back in '96, run the first course in '97. And we've always been on the front end of these developments. And, we're accredited for pretty much everything I've spoken about, actually, to be honest. Providing classroom, virtual classroom and e-learning services. And that last line, by the way, we deliver all our events like it's the first time. That doesn't mean to say that we're green and we're not really sure what we're talking about. What I mean, it's enthusiasm, it's enthusiastic. Hopefully you've gauged how we deliver our events from this presentation, because it's it really means a lot. And I'm really proud to have contributed to the project management industry over the last 25 years, to help, develop these methods to what we have today. Final few slides. When you do get these slide packs, I'm not going to go through these now, but there's 3 or 4 slides which give a summary of the methods and guidances that I've been through. So you've got PRINCE2, APM, PRINCE2 versus APM PMQ as qualifications, AgilePM, MSP, MOP, MRR, and change management. Okay, so if you wanted to read up briefly on any of those, they're on the slide. Or as I say, there's plenty of stuff online as well that will help you. Okay, right. Are there any final thoughts, final questions before I hand back over to Simon?
I see there was a fresh question from Enrico. It looks like it might take you a few minutes to go into depth on that, though.
Is this the one on AI?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did address that, Simon. In the respect that I do agree that the bodies of knowledge do need to incorporate AI because through governance and ethics, sort of we've got that. It would make life a lot easier, I think. Especially when you're looking at the reporting cycles as well between different levels within project organisations, and it take a lot of the labour intense areas out of the project management processes. And as I say, in future bodies of knowledge, I think that it's probably going to take a few years to really integrate properly. But I suspect that the first instalment of AI is going to be more about sort of adding in a few sections here and there rather than full integration into our bodies of knowledge. It's just the way these things go in any development, to be honest. But I think it's a really exciting, I've got to say. And as I said, Simon, I'm really keen to get a look at that AI spring show that you're planning there. I think that's going to be a really, really interesting presentation. Just one more thing, Enrico. Would there be a path to cross-credential to one another? The only cross-credential you have with PRINCE2, if you already have a qualification in APM or PMI or IPMA, then you don't have to take the foundation level exam in PRINCE2. You can go straight to practitioner. And also APM, if you get in before July, if you've got a PRINCE2 practitioner certificate, then you can take a shorter exam on APM, but it's not worth it. Trust me. If you've got a PRINCE2 qualification, don't be lured in by this PRINCE2 APM for PRINCE2 practitioners, because what essentially happens is you won't be tested on anything to do with PRINCE2. It'll be tested on all the new stuff you've just learned. Whereas if you stick with the original exam, you're going to be tested on 16 possibly, or 10 from 16 rather than 6 from 10 topics. So you've got a much better chance of knowing what you're talking about on the full exam. So that would be my advice.
I think it's important for people to understand that different organizations and different countries have different preferences about which certificates they appreciate and which they take no interest in. And it's obviously a very complex thing for us to try and explain here and now, but they really need to take a look at their own environment, the sector they're in, their employer, the country they're in, to make the right judgments about which methodologies and which training, which certifications to go for.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Simon. And that's often the driver for people coming to get those certifications, because it's usually based on the organization they're working for or the region in the world that they're working in. You go to some regions and they won't recognize PRINCE2. You go to other regions and they won't recognize IPMA. I mean, IPMA is very small in the UK, but absolutely massive across mainland Europe. And the same with PMI, sort of not much in the UK. PRINCE2 tends to get good traction in most places, but not in the US. So again, it depends where you are and what organization you're working for that might drive you in terms of what your professional development might look like.
Anyway, I think we should probably wrap things up, Paul. Absolutely wonderful listening to you going at that speed through all of that complexity. And I'm sure people will be very pleased to know that, yes, we will share the slide and also in due course share the video. And the place to find that is on the BCS Project Management Specialist Group's page on the internet. And it will have moved from current events to past events. So you'll find a link there that says past events, when not only will you find the slides and video from this event, but from all of our other ones, which have now been basically running ever since the pandemic started and we went online. So there's quite a library of materials there. What I might just do for people, as we finish, I'll just go back to that Spring School slide, not because I'm plugging it again, because it's got the QR code that will take you to the page without you having to Google it. But for now, I think let's call it a day. It's been a great session. Thank you, Paul. We will be looking forward to your next update, I'm sure. And I'm sure everybody would give you a great virtual round of applause.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say thank you for the invitation. I do enjoy the presenting for you guys, and look forward to the next time.
Thank you. Well, I'm just going to turn everything off except the slide, and then you can pick up on that. Hopefully you guys are now looking at that slide again, the Spring School slide. You can, of course, sign up for the Spring School. We'll be delighted for you to do that. But the same page is the one that you'll find the links to the video and slide pack as soon as they're ready. Typically takes a week or two before they're up on the web. So thank you very much, everybody. I wish you good night.